This happened all the way back in 2004. I lived alone in a small place just a few towns over from where I live currently. I don't remember which day it was, but I had a few days off from work, and I remember the night this happened. It was pouring outside. I had been home all day, watching TV and hanging out on the front porch relaxing. At maybe 10 o'clock, well past sunset, I was sitting on the porch watching the rain come down when I heard ringing from inside my house. I headed in and saw the home phone was going off. I didn't recognize the number, and the thing said unknown ID, so I didn't answer it. And yes, I did have a cell phone, but it wasn't anything nice. It was just a flip phone and did nothing but call and text. So if I was at home, I'd only use the home phone, and my cell would be lying around somewhere by my car keys, because I only used it when I went out. I let the call ring through and headed back out to the porch. Heavy rain on quiet nights always had a way of relaxing me. Nobody else was outside, and even most of the houses hardly had any lights on. Felt like I was the only one still awake. But strangely, after getting back from the phone and 5 minutes of sitting out there, my mood very suddenly shifted. I started to feel sort of uneasy, looking around more and being more creeped out by the darkness rather than calm. It was really weird and not something I think I'd ever felt before, at least not so suddenly and without reason. I thought the feeling would pass, and I wanted it to, because before I was really enjoying my time out there, just watching the rain. But it didn't. If anything, the feeling got worse, like this dark gut feeling looming over the neighborhood. And after 30 minutes, I did not want to be out there at all anymore. I headed in and sat on the couch instead, turning on the TV and trying to chill out. But then the phone started ringing again. I got right back up and looked at the caller. It was the same unknown ID. I picked up the phone, but before clicking the answer button, I changed my mind and set it back down. It was too late to be answering a random call like that. Whoever it was calling had to realize at some point that they had the wrong house. I sat back on the couch and watched TV for an hour. During that time, the rain outside turned into more of a storm. Thunder cracking in the distance, and the flooded streets got even worse. It was past 11 p.m. The house was dark, with just the TV lighting up the room, and my eyes were getting tired, when suddenly heavy knocks hit the front door. I stood up from the couch and stared at the door for a second, with the near heart attack it gave me. No way in hell I was going to answer that. But the person kept knocking, and I was curious enough to walk up to get a look at who was out there. The glass on the eye hole was fogged over from the heavy rain, but I could still tell that it was a man, and he was wearing all black with a hood covering his head, and I'm pretty sure a mask covering his face as well. He looked extremely suspicious, and he was leaning close to the door like he was trying to listen to inside of my house. To me, there was almost no doubt that he was up to something. I walked quietly over to the home phone. I picked it up and turned the volume all the way down so he wouldn't be able to hear me. At this point, I was still thinking that the man probably wouldn't escalate this into anything, at least not right away. So when I dialed 911, it was mainly just to let them know that some suspicious guy was walking around the neighborhood knocking on people's doors. But right when I clicked call, the guy outside hit the door again. Not like a knock though. It sounded like a tool slamming against the door. I looked over and he hit it again, and I saw the door literally shift out of the frame, maybe an inch or two. I very quickly realized he was going to get in, and I only had seconds to decide what to do. I put the phone back and hid in the bathroom right in the hallway. Unfortunately, my home phone was wired to the wall, so I couldn't just take it into hiding with me. 10 seconds later, I heard the door get forced open. The rain was instantly so much louder, and for a whole minute, I really didn't hear anything else. I didn't hear him walk inside or make any sounds. It was just heavy rain and thunder. A part of me was very tempted to quickly go back to the phone, but I knew something still wasn't right. And I'm glad I listened to my gut, because after that minute, I then started to hear his boots move down the hallway. He moved slowly, not in a rush, and almost like he didn't think anyone knew he was there. It was unnerving, listening to this guy calmly walk through each of the rooms downstairs, until I heard him walk back toward the front door. I heard the front door close, and for an instant a flood of relief came over me that he had left. But then I heard him take a few more steps, realizing he was still inside. He walked back down the hallway, right past the bathroom I was hiding in, and then moved up the staircase to where the bedrooms were. It was carpet upstairs, so I could only hear the occasional creak of the floors, but I couldn't listen to his footsteps like I was before. And for about 15 minutes I waited there. I didn't hear anything. The man never came back downstairs. I had no idea what the hell he was doing, but every time I wanted to go to the phone, I would freeze, worried that with my luck, he'd come right back down while I was in the hallway, or that he could even be standing right at the bottom of the stairs right now. But then I could hear some chatter through the rain outside of my house, and then a voice call out police department. I ran out and saw 2 officers out on my front porch. They were doing a welfare check after getting my call and not getting anything back. I quickly explained that someone was upstairs, and they went up, and supposedly the man had no idea police were there. When they got up to the main bedroom, the officers found him laying on the bed, just relaxing, and he even had set a knife and gun down on the dresser by the bed, like he was making himself at home. They took him out, obviously, and tried to question him, because I think it was pretty clear he wasn't just there to rob me, and had some weird, likely harmful intentions. But he wouldn't cooperate, and they could only get him for armed breaking and entering. I never even got an answer as to whether it was a deliberate attack on me, or if I was just an unlucky victim. Being over 2 decades now, without another incident, I assume it was the latter, but it doesn't take away from how terrifying it all was. Had I answered one of the calls, or answered the door, or just been found by him, there's no saying how that night would have ended. Last week, my mom left on her quarterly work trip, leaving the house to myself for just a few days. This was a pretty normal thing, and while the first few times felt cool to be alone for several days, after a while the excitement faded, and it was just a regular occurrence. I'd just chill and watch TV or play video games, maybe hang out with a friend or something. On Saturday, the day after she left, I woke up to rain coming down, and it stayed consistent all throughout the day. I didn't have anywhere to go, nor did I really feel like leaving, so I stayed in. Around 2, the gloomy and stormy weather made me pretty tired, and I decided to take a short nap on the couch downstairs. When I woke up, the house was dark. Not because it was late, but the clouds outside had gotten even gloomier, and the rain was coming down even harder. But what had woken me up was someone whistling. Right outside the front of the house, I could hear some guy whistling a soft tune, getting closer and closer, until he stopped right outside the front door. I was sure it had to be a delivery driver, casually dropping off a package. But I didn't hear anything else, or hear him walk away. It sounded like he just stopped right outside the door. After a bit of waiting, I got up and looked. There was a man standing on the porch. Didn't look like a delivery driver or worker of any kind. Just some average dude with a denim jacket and wet hair hanging over his face. I'm not the kind of guy to be confrontational. I always preferred to avoid talking to anyone if possible, so there was no chance I was going to open the door or say anything unless this guy knocked or rang the doorbell first. So I stayed there looking out for several minutes, and the man never did anything. He just stood there, sheltered under the overhang on the porch, and looked at the door. It wasn't even like he was waiting for me to open it. It was really weird and made me feel uneasy about this guy. After those 5-ish minutes, he then started looking around a bit before walking off the porch and into the rain. I heard him start whistling again, and I moved to the window to watch as he went out to the road and faded out behind all the rain. I couldn't think of a single normal reason for what he was doing. Even if he was just shielding from the rain for a moment, why stand in one place staring at the door for 5 minutes? Overall, though, I didn't know what to do about it. I went back to the couch and tried to just forget it, and around 7, I went up to my room. I had my gaming PC up there, so most nights I would spend the last few hours before bed watching YouTube or playing video games. Being the weekend, and with a few of my friends getting online, I stayed up late. I think it was 1 a.m. when all my buddies got off, and so I decided to call it a night as well. I got up from my chair, rolled into bed, and fell asleep. I woke up an hour later to a thump sound. As my eyes started to open, I heard it again. A loud, hollow thump that sounded like it was right next to me. Then, when I sat up, it happened again. It was the window right next to my bed. Someone was throwing rocks or something at it. I moved the curtain and peered out. It was dark and still raining heavily, but there was a man standing below the window. He looked drenched, like he'd been out there for hours, but I couldn't make out what he really looked like. Immediately, my mind went to the guy that I saw whistling outside the front door, but I couldn't say for sure. I couldn't even tell if he had the same jacket on. I watched him reach into his pocket, then throw something at the window again. It made me flinch, clicking against the glass. Still, I couldn't tell exactly what it was he was throwing, but from the sound, I felt like it could definitely damage or break the window. Not to mention, it was also just creepy as hell. I moved away to stay out of range of the glass possibly shattering, then thought about what to do. He kept throwing stuff at the glass for a whole minute, and I figured since he was so focused on my bedroom window, maybe I could go downstairs to the side window and snap a picture of him so that the police would have something to identify him with. Of course, my adrenaline was flowing and I wasn't thinking perfectly, but my thought process was that the man might not be standing out there for too much longer, so I wanted to get a picture before he ran off. Otherwise, I was sure the police would be of no use. I hurried downstairs and moved to the closest window, but when I looked outside, it felt even darker. I couldn't see anything, and as I looked out and held my phone up, waiting to get a view of him, I realized I didn't hear the thumping sounds of him throwing anything at the upstairs window anymore. As the seconds started to pass, I started to feel my body tense up, and this almost panicking feeling come through. Before, out of nowhere, a figure ran up to the downstairs window and slammed into it, literally about a foot away from me, cracking the glass. I ran back and heard him break the window as I stood in the living room and called 911. I didn't want to go back upstairs, because if he did get inside, then I'd be trapped up there. After the guy broke the window, though, he started calling out for me, just yelling hello over and over in this dark, gravelly voice. Then he moved to a different window and started hitting it or breaking it, still calling out. The police actually responded really fast, though. He was still outside the house banging on the windows when they arrived. But when he saw the lights, he booked it into the wooded area past the neighborhood. And with the storm, following him wasn't really an option. My mom flew back home and we had a lot of talks with the officers, but there wasn't too much else that happened. Cases like these, where it's just a maniac with bad intentions, are hard to figure out. Like, did he know I was home alone, or was it just bad timing? And was he stalking the house, or did he spontaneously just decide to attack me for no reason? Maybe I'll get answers in the coming weeks, but so far I got nothing. I just hope it doesn't happen again. A while back, I had a security guard gig at a small hotel. It wasn't in a great part of town, but being fairly rural, it was mostly quiet. The hotel was on the very edge of the town, the very last building before the road takes you through empty fields for miles on end. Because the hotel was small, most nights it really was just me and the receptionist. My job was to patrol outside the building, though, I guess to stop anything from happening before they get into the hotel. Of course, I'd head in every so often to chat with the receptionist or to grab a drink, but most of the time I'd be standing outside by the door or patrolling around the parking lot. This night, almost right when I started my shift at 10 p.m., a woman walked through the doors with nothing but a small purse. She looked young, like 25, but very exhausted. Her hair was dripping from the storm we had going on that night, and she looked like she needed to sleep real bad. She headed up to the reception desk and got a room, and I was gonna offer to help load up her stuff, but she never came back out for any luggage or bags or anything. So I stayed posted up. With the storm, I really did not want to do any big foot patrols outside. Over the following hour, nothing really happened. It got colder, and the rain seemed to keep everyone at home. No cars driving by on the main road, and no one staying at the hotel moving in or out. Just a calm, stormy night. Around 12 a.m., as I was pacing around the front doors, I noticed someone out in the rain. He was by the few cars in the parking lot and was walking toward the hotel. I stopped pacing and stood by the door once he got closer, then nodded and said hello as he walked up, assuming he was heading inside. But he didn't change direction. He was walking straight at me. I looked him in the eyes, and he had this creepy, tired, and sickly look over his face. And in a way, he almost looked sad. It was strange, and mixed with him being soaked by the storm, it was not a good look. He stopped right in front of me, and his eyes darted to my side, then back up at me. I immediately knew he glanced down at my holster. He stood there for a moment before saying anything. Not long enough for it to really be awkward, but just enough for me to feel something off. "How late is this place open until?" I looked over at the sign right next to me that said 24-hour hotel and told him it was always open. He nodded slowly, then his eyes shifted to the doors, like he thought about going in, but he didn't move. "Are you guys always here this late?" I thought that was a weird question, kinda just the same as his first question. "Yeah, man, like I said, we're open 24/7, so someone's always here." As I was responding, I think I sort of picked up on what he was trying to figure out. I think he was trying to see if the place had security posted up all the time. Before I could ask anything about it, though, the guy just walked off, back into the parking lot and into the rain. And I didn't see any cars pull out or drive away, so I'm not sure where he really went. I had a read that he was up to something, but still completely speculation. Could have been me just overanalyzing it. Another 2 hours went by, so it was 2 a.m. The storm let up a little, but not enough to really do any big patrols around the entire building. I did feel like since the rain was slower, I'd do a short walk just up and down the parking lot. I walked down the front of the building and looked around the side. No cars or people down there. It was just completely dark and empty. I then stayed at the front but walked into the parking lot. Even from just that short walk, I was already cold and my clothes were soaked through. I turned around and started to walk back, and then across the lot, I saw that man again. He was walking into the hotel, looking at me, but turning his head away as soon as I saw him. He walked straight through the doors, and I instantly knew something was off. I rushed to the front and through the doors, and he wasn't there. It was just the receptionist at the desk. I looked around for a second before she asked me if I was okay. I asked if that guy came in, and what he wanted and where he went. I tried not to sound too over the top about it, but more like I was just making sure everything was good. I mean, if he just walked in and got a room, then I'd look crazy. She said the man that just walked in asked her for a spare key to the room him and his wife were staying in. But when she asked him for his name and everything just to verify, he said whatever and walked down the hall to the staircase. She then asked if I thought something was up with him, and I said I didn't know. I walked over to the stairs and decided to head up to the second floor to see if I could figure this out. Soon as I opened the door to the hallway, I found him. He was standing outside one of the rooms, banging on the door and holding a knife in his hand, like one of those big hunting knives. He was so enraged he didn't even notice me at first. I immediately unholstered my firearm and pointed it at him, yelling for him to drop the knife and back up from the door. When he looked at me, his eyes were bloodshot and wide open, with this terrifying look of insanity, and he looked like he was contemplating whether or not to charge at me with the knife. But after a moment, he did what I told him. I held him there while I called for the police to come, and they were able to take him in. Behind the door he was at was the exhausted-looking woman that had walked in earlier in the night. I guess they had gotten into some sort of altercation, and she ran away from him, which is why she checked in without any belongings. Though, oddly, she wasn't his wife or girlfriend, at least from what I was told by the police later on. They didn't get too specific or give me too many details. I do know he was stalking the hotel and watching me outside that entire night, though, because the cops said he actually got to the hotel just a minute after the woman did, and he knew which room she was staying in because he saw the light turn on in the window. But that night could have gone 100 times worse. The door he was trying to break through was cheap, and he nearly busted it open. Even if I got there just 30 seconds later, he could have already gotten through and done something horrible. It was by far the craziest thing to happen to me at that job, and I don't miss working there at all.